I think I'm just going to start. What do you think? Yes? Yeah? Anyone in the room who does not understand Dutch? Okay, okay. So I did prepare in English, so that's a good thing then. There might be some text in the document still in Dutch, but don't worry. Most of it will be quite clear in English as well. So this is me. It's a story about AiTM. I do not expect any one of you to scan that QR code, but if you do, that will bring you to the LinkedIn page, the legitimate LinkedIn page. For me, not gonna take too much time with this. So first off, as the title of this talk is obviously about AiTM data and the detection data that we got from 1 year of providing detection for that. But we have to take one step back and tell you guys what actually is AiTM, or adversary in the middle. Who is not familiar actually with the term at all? Okay, okay. So who does think they kind of understand what it does, but not entirely? Raise of hands. Okay, so most of the people here are quite certain of themselves. How does an AiTM attack work, and how does it? So I will go through the slides in explaining how it works, but I will go through them a bit fast then. So first, for AiTM, you have to understand how authentication works in the token-based time that we live in. So it's basically when you get into a festival or so, you have one moment where you have to go through extensive authentication. You have to show your ID maybe, you have to show your pass, your actual ticket into the festival. Maybe you want to go through your stuff, your backpack, see if there's anything in there, and maybe there's some metal detector there. A lot of checks and balances there. But once you go through, you might get like a wristband like that will then allow you to go move throughout the place and get into areas and stuff like that. Maybe even exit the place and get back in. So basically, that's what a token does. It's basically a way in proving that you have gone through the process of authentication before. And that's really what a token is in web-based authentication as well, and what is being misused in a typical AiTM attack. So how do you get a token like that if you would look at the Microsoft 365 login flow? So this is the legitimate Microsoft login flow. So normally you go to the login.microsoftonline.com webpage. And this also goes for other websites, by the way. So the whole ITM stuff, although we are providing detection for Microsoft particularly, this is really a problem for all web services out there. But now focus on Microsoft. So as a visitor, you want to log into Microsoft, you get this page, right? So, and this is similar for everyone, but because at this page, Microsoft is not aware to which particular organization you belong or where they need to authenticate you with. So here you provide your email address, and then Microsoft understands, oh, you're trying to log into Zolder.io in my case. So we forward you now to the authentication policies that belong to that particular organization, and that is where also my logo comes in, and branding, stuff like that. So here I am now presented with the password prompt, and this password prompt then is validated, of course, and then if I've turned on MFA, I will then be rerouted to the second authentication method, which might be an SMS authentication or anything. In my case, it's like this. You probably are all familiar with this one. It's like the push notification where you get, in this case, 85, and it corresponds with the 85 on your telephone, and then you can push it in, and Microsoft then validates the second authentication as well, and it will then generate that token, basically that wristband, that will allow you to get in to all the web Microsoft services that are providing web services out there. So this token is this bunch of data. It's really unreadable, but it's really like plain text data. So it's also something that you could copy and then paste into another location, and that is where the problem comes in, because that it can be replayed as a token into a new session by a new user on a completely different computer from a different IP address. But this is really a legitimate flow, and that is where AiTM in one way needs to break into. And how does it do that? Well, AiTM does not work, and this is very important to understand, does not work with a website. So although as a victim you will be misled to go into some strange URL, maybe through a QR code, maybe really by a phishing email, the server that you will be landing on when clicking that link is not a website, it's a proxy server. And it's a big difference, because no one has built a website on the server that you land on. It's a live stream of data coming from Microsoft, because a proxy server works like this. It's a system that will retrieve a website on your behalf and then present that website to you. And that's really what a proxy server does. And it's a legitimate use case, because that provides with caching. So if all of you are trying to visit new.nl at the same time in your company, then it's quite efficient to only get that actual data from the internet one time and present all of that to you at the same time. And it also provides with IP hiding, so it will be then difficult to understand where the actual web visitor is coming from. But it also provides with inspection. And that could also be a good thing, because it provides then with like malware detection and stuff like that at the proxy level. But in this case, it can also be misused, because inspection provides us with ways of really seeing what is the traffic between the actual website and the visitor trying to get to that website. So the proxy server now is used in this way, that the attacker leads the victim to this malicious URL in one way or another. Doesn't matter really. LinkedIn message, I don't care. The proxy is running on that URL, so not a website. The proxy connects to login.microsoft.com. It will then send the resulting website, including that logo that I get from my configuration, to the end user. And now the all traffic basically that passes between those guys, it can now be inspected by the attacker, including the resulting wristband or session token that is from that ends up after a successful authentication. So this is basically how AiTM works, and how it's different from like a static phishing page that needs to be crafted and built to basically match a little bit how it should look. So what do we know about this stuff, and why am I talking about this here? So what we did is, as I said, is that in this process of the proxy getting in the data from Microsoft to present it to you, it will also get in the company branding, right? So as I said, this logo that is there in the second page, it will also be passed by the proxy to me. And it allows us to also add some more code to the login page. And in this case, only this little bit of code will be added by our service to the connected companies in their company branding configuration. And you see here, there's a personal link. Obviously, this is different for every company that uses our service. And this will lead to no visible indication at all if the Microsoft login page is actually the legitimate one, because it's just a white background with nothing. But once we detect that we are being loaded from a URL that's not Microsoft's, then we transform the background into something like this. And we also, of course, then know that someone's trying to visit a AiTM site. And this is something that we've been running now for over a year. And we have been serving over 350 different companies with this type of detection. And this has provided us with a lot of data about how these type of attacks occur, and when they occur, and where from. And this is basically the base of our report. So once we had that thing going, we realized that, oh my God, this is happening so often. because now we had an idea of how often people are actually getting into these websites, and we thought, okay, we might be it might be a good idea to do more about this, right? So what we then also decided to do is to make we have a big backend infrastructure where we go into new URLs being registered for SSL certificates, because this is something that you can get from the internet. It's transparent information. And then try to fingerprint whether on that new URL a proxy server is being installed. It's a bit details, but we are actually able to, as a new SSL certificate is registered, to really say if that's a proxy server, yes or no. And in that case, if it is, we put it on a list, like on a block list, and they're all here. By average now, there's like 300 new URLs registered every day that we know of, and that's quite a lot and quite effective, but might be not even all of them. And what we have also now done is make a browser add-on that will take this data, and then if one would browse to this particular URL, block that access, like with a warning like that. You can test it out yourself if you want to do an AiTM attack on your own organization. It's quite fun to do. This is our POC, proof of concept. There's a clear red line indicating also that it's only for this purpose. But this is a working installation, and it runs on Cloudflare workers. So it's really, there's no infrastructure. You can just go there and test out your own organization, see if it works. Your password will be then captured by us. So be careful. But if you have if you have an installation like we built, like this one, which is free to use if you want, then you will already see that once you only enter your email address here, because then obviously your company branding is loaded. Right, so that's the background story. Now to the report data. Questions so far, maybe, about the technique? No? All clear? Well, you did a good job. Hey. Okay, so we are looking at it ranges from July 2024 till June last month, so June 2025. In this time, we have registered close to 600 visits to actual AiTM sites. So this is not URLs getting into a mailbox of a user. No, it's actual people clicking that URL in, and then also filling out their email address, because only then will we be able to detect that. So it's quite a lot, right? I must say though that we, when we started with this detection, we found some Microsoft services visiting our backend as well, and we thought, what's going on here? And we found out that Microsoft has some services like Defender and SafeLinks, for instance, quite useful. They will go out and test URLs that enter into mail flow or messages themselves before a user clicks them, so that they will be able to say if it's safe, yes or no, to visit that. So only close to 500 of all the clicks were actual visits by people clicking those links. Not super much data, but still enough, I think, to get a sense of how this works and get some valuable insights for you guys. We did do some filtering, so this is about the Microsoft scanning. There's an NL subset that we try to see how does it happen in Dutch organizations, campaign reuse. And one thing, but because that's I think an important finding. We did try to filter all the IP addresses that we saw visits from to see whether people visit our the phishing site from a corporate network or outside of that. Because if it happens from inside the corporate network, you have all possibilities to provide detection and protection for that. But if they're outside the perimeter, of course, it will be quite hard to actually prevent users from going that way. So that was a useful thing to do as well. So throughout the year, obviously we had the growing amount of installations. So we didn't have like 0 to 350 at one time, so that grew. And we made a calculation of those installed customers we had, how much of them had one URL clicked in that period. So if you look, it has gone down a bit from Q3. If you look at the detections, and those are including the Microsoft ones where they go out in scanning. But the green one is where they actually click, and that's quite a steady line. So although our user base has grown, it will be around 20% per quarter of organizations where at least one employee has clicked a link in that period, in that quarter. And you have to understand if the, in our case, if our service is active, they probably might have clicked the link and then stopped proceeding and actually filling their details. But they have already basically been scanned, but they have gone so far as to fill out their email address. So if we weren't active, they probably would also have gone the full way and provided their full credentials. So I would say it's safe to conclude that 1 in 5 organizations might be hacked in such a way. At least their credentials get stolen, because you have to consider that once an attacker gets access to credentials that way, they don't necessarily use that credentials themselves right away, but they might resell it to other cyber criminals to perform. And from that point on, it will be like business email compromise, maybe ransomware that's going on all within your cloud. What we also see a lot is that they enter an environment and then start spraying out those malicious URLs to a lot more people from that victim they just made. So yeah, there's a whole lot going on, but really these are the cases. I think most of the ones that have entered the Dutch media in the last couple of days or weeks probably all started with such an AiTM attack. I'm guessing, but could well be so. Okay, so a little bit of network context. As I said, I must say though that this is not really hard to or really definitive data. So what we have done is taken the IP address of the visitor to the AiTM website, and then going back and try to figure out if that what network provider that IP address belonged to, and it's not a really 100% sure case because we don't have that data. What we did is match that data with ipinfo.io to get an understanding of what ASN it belonged to. And from that filtering, we got this idea that around 44% of the visits came from outside their corporate network. So those are people that were connected then to a mobile network, maybe like a private internet provider, so basically working from home, or maybe outside of the Netherlands, or connected to a VPN. So roughly about 50% is not connected to the corporate network when visiting an AiTM site, something to consider. Time of clicking, also nice. So this is something you could consider that those AiTM attacks happen in the middle of the day, but that's obviously not the case because we are measuring the click. So such an URL could well be sent to a victim during the night, or maybe every day before, or I don't care, but victims tend to click on them in the middle of the day. So yeah, take from that what you want, but it's around lunchtime, maybe that the guard is down a bit, or maybe people just spend time clicking things at that time, or they are in places where there's more to click, I don't know. But yeah, that's one thing that you can take from the data. And also the most clicked day of the week are Tuesdays. So those are the Tuesday lunch break, really dangerous times. Okay, reuse. Also something to understand is that it's quite nice to understand in what sense the URLs that are visited are reused among other organizations as well, because that indicates that you probably being targeted as part of a larger campaign rather than being targeted, like in a spear phishing campaign or so. And what we saw is that quarter of the parts was detection that happened more often, and almost the same amount was at multiple organizations. So doesn't necessarily say that all the other ones aren't shared with other ones as well, but at least a good part of them have been detected at multiple organizations, a quarter of them, saying that those URLs have been shared as part of bigger campaigns. Now, of all those duplicates, the Microsoft scans are basically completely there. So this is saying that if we have 2 detections, then one is probably someone clicking the link, and the other one is Microsoft scanning the link, right? And that happens then in multiple organizations. Now, you could say, well, all the Microsoft scanning, we don't care about those. Probably that's just a service they provide. So that's a good thing that they're scanning this service. So I don't care. But it still says, as I mentioned before, like 1,600 URLs entering organizations, including the ones Microsoft scanning, is that those URLs are in the vicinity of your users wanting to click them, right? So they have been delivered somewhere. But what you also see is that although Microsoft scans those URLs, doesn't necessarily mean that they will be protected right away, because it happens in 20% of the time that Microsoft was the first one to visit the URL, and then later a user still got in. Although you would say, well, if Microsoft knows that it's malicious, they would be able to block access to that as well. That's the whole purpose of it. So maybe there's a delay. Maybe that's because the URL was scanned in one tenant, having these kind of services active, and the user was visiting from another tenant where those services are not active. I don't know, but those are nice insights. Okay, some domain extensions. So as I said, is that we are not only doing the CSS type of detection in company branding, we're also proactively fingerprinting all new URLs registered anywhere, regardless what they're trying to target, whether it's Microsoft, Google, iCloud, I don't care. So we're fingerprinting all those instances. And what we see is that domain extensions being registered, there's a lot of .com actually, obviously, but also like a bit risky type of strange TLDs like XYZ and SBS and stuff like that. Why are attackers using those? Because it's quite easy for them and probably quite cheap for them to register a URL there. So and then they can do something like Microsoft Online.xyz, XYZ. So this is what we see happening, or download document.xyz, I don't care. So those are things that we see. Also, recognizable words in the domain names like Office or OneDrive or Microsoft. So those are really words that are within those domains as well. On the other hand, what's interesting is that, so this is URLs being registered, not necessarily being clicked. So what we see from the clicks is that those strange TLDs, they are not clicked that often. So people are really, understanding that, looking at TLDs or as part of the domain will help them recognizing phishing. And I think that user awareness has worked in that sense. So they probably, although those are registered, they're not really clicking them. What do they click? Well, a lot of .com and .nl, so really the trustworthy domain extensions for Dutch environments, and then a really long tail of other variants as well. So, but the .com and .nl stand out, I would say. So those are basically the key findings that we get from the report. And obviously it brings us to some recommendations. There are phishing-resistant MFA methods. I think you are aware of that. So that will not be able to being phished by an attack like this. So it's really worthwhile to enable those phishing-resistant MFA methods, at least for your admins. And there's also a standard configuration or a standard policy option you have in conditional access. It's a template to force your admins to use a phishing-resistant MFA method when logging into, for instance, Entra. The problem there is, though, that those are less user-friendly and also maybe a bit expensive, but because you can handle out hardware keys, of course, but you have to figure out, also think of loss and damages, stuff like that. So it's quite an expensive solution. So rather you would go probably for passkeys. So software-based FIDO2 mechanisms, and they're also phishing resistant, so they cannot be misused. But if you reside to push notifications, SMS-based notification, email-based, those are not phishing resistant, so they are not safe, I would say, or not safe enough. You have to consider something else. So this is something that you can do. As I said, what I told about it is enough. You can get it for free, and it's really set up in like 5 minutes, and it works like a charm. So don't waste time and just enable that. Then we have one other, like a really useful feature that you could consider is to enable compliance-based authentication. And this also resides in the conditional access part of Microsoft. So in Enter ID, you can say now only known devices, managed devices by organizations are allowed to log into our environment. What will happen then when a user visits an AiTM site, then the proxy server itself will try to connect to Microsoft, because that is how it works. But that's not known with the organization. It's not a managed device, so it will not be able to log in. So it's a really effective one if you are able to do that, to switch it on. It does get you into trouble with your bring your own device policy maybe, but still something to consider, because you can then still say, well, maybe those bring your own devices can only log in from Dutch IP addresses, or think of some combinations you can make there to improve this type of detection. Then, as we learned, is that there's so much reuse of URLs that it's really, really useful if you have a detection like this to work together with your peers or a threat sharing community to find a way to share those URLs together and protect each other from that. What we do, at least, is that all the URLs that we gather from our detection service, we register in that database, and they will be shared through our browser plugin and back into our service as well. But it's something that you can do yourself, obviously, also. Yes, and this simulates extra awareness about AiTM around launch times. Might something that you consider is that on Tuesday, like at 11 o'clock or so, don't click any links now. That's probably something to consider as well. So to sum up and call to action, I would say you really have to consider that this identity of your users really is your parameter now, because 50% of the time, as we saw, your users will click a link from outside your corporate network, and the only protection they have then is like their authentication. It can be so that they might be clicker happy, in certain times, so spend some time on this. Consider the fact that there's reuse of URLs, and think of ways to share intelligence that you gather from your service, and also use intelligence like that to block access to AiTM sites. And of course, if you want to know more, we are right outside here at the HSD pavilion as one of the stand holders. And I do want to share a little bit commercial slide, what we provide as a service. So I mentioned the free service, which is providing the intervention screen, basically, that is active on your login page. And we have now today launched a new service that's really targeting AiTM and provides more access there. And also will connect to your sign-in logs and then match those sign-in logs to behavior we see from login attempts. So for instance, also what we learned from a new post about some threat research, which was posted on, I think it was Dark Hacker News, it was, is that hackers tend to find a way to use a certain way to really use those stolen credentials to log into Microsoft environment. And we can gather IOCs from that and then match the actual login attempts to your environment to see if those match and then sound an alarm. For instance, there was now a report published where it was concluded that those attackers used a user agent Axios to log in into your Enter ID. And this is obviously something that you can gather from our log. But this is something that we have been monitoring a long time already, because we've seen that as well. Because we are so on top of this that we see those guys using it. And then we start alerting from it. So that's one thing that you can get from the login monitoring. The other thing is that in this case, as we're not in your logs, we cannot tell you whether the user has actually shared their credentials or that they stopped in doing so, because we are only providing some styling, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they stopped. Here we can. And not only can we tell you whether they did, but we can also tell you that they did not. So you don't have to go through the route of disabling an account, doing research and all stuff like that. And that's really, in terms of alert fatigue, maybe something to consider as well. And then we provide some more services, and I won't go into that right now. We did build some user awareness training together with our partners from Awareways. It's really it involves the threat of AiTM for your end users. And the idea, a personal idea of myself, is that I think most end users have some level of guards down because they think that they are protected by MFA. And I think that it's about time to teach them a little bit that MFA is not a silver bullet, and that they still have to be careful in where and how they log in. So built this user awareness training as well. And a browser plugin is coming. All right. That's it for my content. I can take some questions. It's not a watch. It's 4 o'clock. But as I'm the latest session, I am allowed to do a little bit of delay. So if you want to talk a little bit more or have questions, feel free. Yep.
Is the browser plugin also supported for phones, so smartphones in general?
Well, it's a browser plugin for Chromium. So if on your browser you use Google Chrome, Safari, then it's not. So if there's a large enough use case for us, we might go that route as well. But right now, no, it's only Chromium, so that will be Chrome and also Edge. It does, though, also protect from URLs that are not targeting Microsoft, but also if they are targeting like iCloud or Booking.com, might be targeted once in a while. Yeah. More? No? Okay. Then I want to thank you all for your listening, and hope to see you on our stand. Thank you.